This episode is brought to you by the Redline Report by Brand Jitsu. What story is your website telling and how is it telling it? Are you just talking about yourself or are you connecting with your customers on a more meaningful level? Find out at brandjitsu.com/redline. If you feel so inclined, you can support the show by like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcast. Also, you can go to patreon.com/RebelRebelPod. The Rebel Rebel is a show dedicated to creative rebels and entrepreneurs all over the world. It's for those people who think audaciously and act courageously in service of making the world a better and more interesting place.
We want to keep a customer and we want to convert them into an evangelist for our brand. Judge people not based on their actions, but their intentions. And in order to do that, I have to know the whole story. I can't make assumptions. And that alone is so mentally freeing.
Jump in with Wayne Mullins as he explains how true marketing is more than just ads. It's about creating a customer experience that extends to every interaction. From a small town to a global stage, Wayne Mullins shares the power of turning customers into brand evangelists. Welcome, Wayne Mullins, to the RebelRebel Podcast. Well, welcome to the RebelRebel Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Dargie, and across the world, and I can't wait to find out exactly where you are, Wayne. But Wayne, where are you? What's going on, Wayne Mullins?
Well, what's going on, Michael? I am in this amazing town called Alexandria, Louisiana.
Oh, damn. That sounds amazing. Already, I love it.
It is. So most people, they've never heard of the town, but they've heard of New Orleans when you hear of Louisiana.
Sure.
So if you take the images, the sights and sounds that come to mind when you think of New Orleans, in your mind, get that picture in your mind, crystal clear.
I got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Now think polar opposite, and that is Alexandria, Louisiana.
Well played, sir.
Yeah, thank you. 100 and probably 50-ish miles. We're to the northwest of New Orleans.
Okay.
So only 150 miles away, but polar opposite in terms of culture and vibe and feels.
Wow, that's so cool. Okay, so it's kind of down, like laid. Wow, I was gonna say laid out, but it's laid back and it's just chill. Is that what I'm getting?
Small town, small community, population 48,000, I believe. So kind of country setting, I guess, if you will, to some degree.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, you're living your best life then, it sounds like.
I am. I'm doing my best to add a little splash of color and excitement to this town.
Very nice. So I can see behind you, it is very colorful, but when the audience sees this, it's actually going to be in black and white because that's our color treatment. So they're not going to get the full effect that I'm getting. So why don't we start here, Wayne? Why don't we, you've got a company called Ugly Mug Marketing, which is super dope. Why don't we start there and you can sort of tell us what you're up to, what's driving you, and then we'll see where the story takes us.
Absolutely. So as you said, we have this great little company called Ugly Mug Marketing. We are based right here in this amazing little town, 48,000 people. But what's so interesting, Michael, is from this little town with no connections, no investment, no, any of the traditional things you would think of in terms of making a marketing agency a success. We've been able to work with clients literally from around the world, publicly traded companies here in the States, New York Times bestselling authors, some really big name kind of celebrity people, all from this one little place. And it has a lot to do with some of our core principles, some of our core beliefs about what marketing really is and what marketing isn't.
Oh, yes. I've been waiting for this conversation. Oh, wicked. So unpack this for me, Wayne. Bring me in.
Absolutely. So I think, Michael, the first place to start a conversation about marketing is we have to agree on what is this thing called marketing. And what's so fascinating is over the years, what I've learned is that so many people confuse marketing and advertising.
Sure.
They use those two terms interchangeably as if they're the same thing. And the reality is that advertising is merely one piece or one component of marketing. So they're not exactly the same thing. And so once we understand that marketing encompasses far more than the ad we run on Facebook or the billboard that we put on the side of the road or the radio spot that we run, marketing is about everything from the way the front of our building looks to the way we answer our phones, to the way we respond or don't respond sometimes to emails, right? All of these ingredients are part of marketing. And that is the beauty, and that is also the scary part about this thing called marketing.
So big. Wow. Well, so I guess, it touches all these things, but how is it that you've attracted these people from all over the world from this sleepy little town that you're in? I mean, it sounds like an amazing story.
Yeah. So when we think about marketing and defining marketing, so we've agreed that marketing and advertising are not the same thing, right? Advertising is a piece or a component.
We have agreed.
Then what is this thing? This thing called marketing, the way we love to define it is this: marketing is your ability to attract and to keep a customer. Now, when we say the word keep, there's a little bit more to that. There's kind of like a sub definition of this keep. And that is this, that we don't want to just keep a customer for the sake of keeping a customer. We want to keep a customer and we want to convert them into an evangelist for our brand.
Nice.
And in that one little phrase is the secret to how we've attracted clients from around the world. It's how we've attracted, some big name celebrities, how we've attracted New York Times bestselling authors. It's because we understand and we buy into this principle of turning existing customers into evangelists for us. We've all heard of this thing called, like the 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
How we are all connected to someone within 6 degrees of separation. And that is so true. And yet as marketers, as entrepreneurs, we don't think about how can we leverage the connection that other people have to grow our own businesses. And so we can dive into all the specifics on some of the things that we do, the creative ways that we convert our customers into evangelists. But that is the key, right? So I'm not advising this, but people could stop listening, stop watching right now.
Don't listen to them.
They could go sit and ponder, what are some things that I can do to turn my existing followers, my existing customers into evangelists for me? Yeah. And just that exercise of thinking through those things and implementing those things will begin to transform all of your marketing.
I love it. I'm in. I drank the punch a long time ago. I think that this is the connection, the human connection is so critical to it all. The truth behind what it is that you're doing that attracts the right people, because you're not going to attract everybody. Not everybody's going to love you. And I think that that's great. I think that's awesome. I'm really curious though, Wayne, if we could, let's do some time travel. Let's go back in time to, and you can pick the first place that we stop in this epic trek. But I'm curious what it is that drove you to create this agency. And we can go back as far as, you're 7 years old and you're sitting with your toes dangling in the bayou. I don't know. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So there are a lot of bayous around here. So you're pretty close.
Yes,
but
I knew it.
My story doesn't involve the bayou, at least not that I can think of. My marketing journey actually began when I was in college. I was pursuing a degree in business, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated. And about midpoint through my career there, my journey there as a student, someone introduced me to this gentleman of the name Zig Ziglar.
Oh, okay.
For those not familiar, I would highly recommend Googling him, checking out some of his, I'm sure you can find a lot of his stuff on YouTube at this point.
Yeah, we'll put some stuff in the links and the notes and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I was introduced to him, and he was really big about sales training. That is kind of what he was known for. Yeah. Well, he convinced me through his training programs that I should pursue a career in sales. And so that's what I did. As soon as I graduated from school, I decided to go into sales. And the most amazing thing happened, Michael, when I got this job. I'd been listening to Zig. I'd started listening to Tom Hopkins. I'd started reading, a lot of other books on sales. So I just knew that I was going to be successful whenever I started.
Okay.
And That wasn't my story. My story was lots of doors slammed in my face, lots of rejection, lots of paychecks with not very much money on them. But because of, I believe, my stubbornness, probably most of all, I kept at it. I kept showing up. I kept learning. I kept having doors slammed in my face. And over time, this amazing thing happened. I started getting good at this thing called selling. And so it was during this journey of selling that what I noticed was that as I got better and better at selling, the amount of revenue that I was generating for the company I was working for started going up at a much quicker rate than it had previously. But as their revenue, as the amount of things I was selling for them was kind of skyrocketing, my pay, on the other hand, was barely trickling up. It was going up, but it was just barely trickling up. And I had this dangerous thought. And that thought was this: what if I took my sales ability and I went and did something for myself? What if I went and used these skills to sell something for myself? Well, at that time, Michael, I didn't have any other skills, any other things I could sell other than all growing up down here in Louisiana. During the summers, I would cut grass for money. That's how I made money all through high school, all through college. And so, much to the dismay of my parents, some colleagues, some friends, I decided to leave this really great corporate sales job, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and start a lawn and landscape company. I took my sales skills, I took how to cut grass, make a yard look nice, combine those two things together, and decided to start a lawn and landscape company. But there's a key point of distinction when I started that company. And this is what I want people to think about. If you're in your journey, if you're on your path and you're about to start something, get crystal clear about what role you want to play in that endeavor. So for me, there could have been the role of the founder, the CEO, the leader, the head, supervisor, whatever the role could have been. There's a lot of things it could have been for me. But in my brain, I viewed myself as the chief marketing officer. From day one, from the very first day when it was me sitting on the lawnmower by myself with no employees, I was thinking, I am the chief marketing officer. Yeah. How am I going to market? How am I going to position my company in such a way that we scale rapidly? I didn't want to just grow. I didn't want to just, add a few accounts each year. I wanted to scale the business. And an amazing thing happened. Within 3 years, we'd gone from just me and a lawnmower and a pickup truck to we were the largest in our region. Wow. So I had multiple crews, multiple trucks. We did multiple types of services, from traditional lawn care to landscaping to sprinkler irrigation. And so I'd grown this thing into a very sizable company. And it was during that process, during that growth process, over a very short period of time, a 3-year period of time, that a lot of people in the community, other business owners, started coming to me and saying, hey, we see how quickly you're growing your business. What are you doing? How are you growing it so quickly? And for a lawn company, you do have the advantage of, it's a very visible type of business. When you have multiple crews with multiple vehicles with, your number and your logo on the sides of them, all your crew wearing your logo on their clothing, and you're maintaining a lot of businesses, it's just a very visible entity. Yeah. And so I started getting phone calls, and these phone calls began getting more frequent. And that is what led me down this path to consulting around marketing. And I guess you could really say those were the super early days of what would become Ugly Mug Marketing.
Wow. Oh boy. Okay. Well, I've got to, just because you said it, I've got to leap further back into your past, and I'd like to have a look at Wayne as a young man mowing lawns in Louisiana. Like, just paint me that picture. Like, I'm just so curious because I've never been to Louisiana.
Yeah. So Louisiana, right now in the, online world, kind of in the fitness space, one of the latest crazes going around right now are saunas. People get in the saunas and they love to sweat, and, they post pictures of themselves all over social media, drenching wet. Well, that is what it's like to work in Louisiana in the summer outside. Just because of the humidity, at 8 o'clock in the morning when you're out on your first job, you are literally soaking wet because it's so hot and it's so humid. Wow. So that is what the days look like. As a young man growing up, I was very interested, not necessarily in hard work, but I was interested in money.
Yeah.
And I was willing to do hard physical labor in exchange for that money. I was more motivated by the outcome, the money, than I was the pain that I was going to go through in the process.
That's awesome. Oh man, that's really cool. So, oh God, so many questions jump to mind. Not the least of which is, talk to me about your favorite piece of art.
Interesting question. Yeah, so I don't recall his name. So I'm very eclectic.
Yeah.
I tend to jump from thing to thing.
Yeah.
But right now there's this artist, and I wish I could think of his name, but he takes glass and he actually chisels the glass, breaks the glass, and makes these amazing pictures from a piece of glass that is nothing more than broken and chiseled cracks all in the glass. And he does these massive exhibits where I'm talking like huge exhibits, the size of a room, out of these glass pieces. And what I love so much about the work is that we take something, a form, a window, a pane of glass, that in our minds has a certain use, right? We don't think of it as a canvas for artwork necessarily.
Yeah.
And then we certainly don't think about the cracks and breaks in the glass as forming something beautiful, right? So often we think of a paintbrush stroke, we think of ink, we think of, maybe it's clay, the different types of medium that can be used to form artwork. And so that's why I love that artwork right now. And so if I had a favorite in the moment, that would be it.
Oh, that is so cool. We'll figure out who that is, and we'll also put that in the show notes because I want to see that too. That sounds fantastic. Yeah. So are you like a driven entrepreneur that's working on and in his business 24/7? Like what does that look like for you? Have you found some balance, or do you say, no, that's not for me?
So my journey, I think, would be one of a traditional entrepreneur initially. So all in, 7 days a week working, I typically would start work at, 7 a.m, work until around supper time, come home, eat dinner with the family, and then start working again once the kids were in bed, work for another few hours, get up and do it again.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much a 7-day-a-week pattern for me for probably the first 5 or 6 years of this agency.
Yeah.
Since then, what I've discovered is that I am my greatest enemy when it comes to leadership and when it comes to growth. What I discovered was what I now call mirror leadership, and how the person that looks back at us in the mirror is the person who's going to always be the most difficult person for us to lead. And until we learn to lead that person well, we will never learn to lead other people well. And so that was a transition point for me. And really where that came from, it came from this lunch I went to. It was an entrepreneurial luncheon. And I had a really good friend of mine who at the time had a business, and he had one employee, and he had someone approach him and offer to buy his company. And I was attempting to convince him to hold on to it a little bit longer, to continue the growth and the momentum that he had for another couple of years. And then his company would have been worth at least 10 times what it was in that moment because of where he was in the trajectory of that company's growth. And so I invited him to come with me to this entrepreneurial luncheon. It's a mastermind that I was a part of. And we go into the room, and the topic of the day just so happened to be employees and employee engagement. And so we get in the room, and the question that the facilitator started with is, I want you to introduce yourself, your company, and the number of people who work for you. And so we start going around the room, and everyone knows this one gentleman. He is the most successful in the room. Seasoned entrepreneur. At the time, he had about 600 employees working for him. So extremely successful. Private plane, all the other stuff. And so we're going around, and everybody's waiting on it to be his turn. And so it gets to this gentleman, and he says, my name is, my company is, and in terms of the number of people who work for me, it's about half of them. And so everyone bust out laughing. It's kind of the joke that only half the people who show up actually want to work. Most of them don't want to be there, all this stuff. So for the next hour and a half, the entire conversation in that room was about how terrible employees are, how they don't want to work, how all they want to do is get out of work, and how there's always drama with your teams. So I left that meeting. I called my friend, asked him, what he thought about it. And he said, well, that made my decision easy. I'm selling the company. I'm not going forward because if I go forward, I'm going to have to hire more people and I don't want to deal with more people.
Yeah.
But I walked away from that meeting really hopeless, Michael, if I'm being honest. Like, I was at this critical point in my own company. We were growing. We'd grown year after year in the agency. And I was dealing with all those same things, right? I didn't think people wanted to work. I didn't think they wanted to show up. There was always issues with employees. And I looked around and reflected on that luncheon and I was like, is this really what I have to look forward to? Is this the reality that I'm going to be facing, right? Because in my head, I kept thinking, someday in the future, I'm going to have enough money and enough time to fix my broken culture.
Right.
But it was that day that I decided that I'm going to figure out how to build a high-performance, self-accountable team. And that was the day that transformed my agency.
Oh man, talk to me about this. How did you get there? Like, what is? And I know that's a big question to ask, but I mean, we've got a little bit of time. Let's dig in.
Yeah, I think it boils down to, number one, kind of the idea of mirror leadership that we talked about earlier. Before, it was always everyone else, right? I was looking at them, trying to fix them, trying to address their issues, instead of first looking at myself. And here's what I know to be true about really all of us, but particularly entrepreneurs, is that we judge other people based on their actions, but we judge ourselves based on our intentions.
Oh my God.
So let me say that one more time. We judge other people based on their actions, but we judge ourselves based on our intentions. So let me give you a scenario. So I'm supposed to be here, let's say at 8:00 in the morning. So I show up and it's 8:15. Well, the people in the office don't know the fact that my kid was up all night, sick, not feeling well, all these things. But I had wonderful intentions, right? My intentions were to be here. I had everything laid out, set out, but I had to take my kid's temperature. I had to give them medicine, I had to do all these things. So my intentions were right. So I judge myself. I give myself a pass based on the fact my intentions were right. Now, flip the scenario. I'm sitting here working. Someone's supposed to be here at 8:00. I see them meandering in at 8:15.
Yeah.
Immediately, I'm making a judgment based on what? Their actions.
Right.
And so then we begin down these stories, and we have to be careful of the stories that we choose to tell ourselves and that we choose to believe. So that's another key thing that I had to learn to do, was judge people not based on their actions, but their intentions. And in order to do that, I have to know the whole story. I can't make assumptions. And that alone is so mentally freeing. When we give up the stories, when we give up the things that we believe to be true without knowing the full context of the story.
Yeah.
And that is a foundational piece of having a great culture, because at the core, a great culture centers around trust. It is built on trust. In other words, if we're in a business relationship, if we're going to have a great working relationship, I have to trust that you're going to do the things that you say you're going to do. And you have to trust that I'm going to live up to my end of the bargain and do the things that I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But in business, that is where the breakdown begins. We, by default, particularly here in America, our default stance is not of trust, it's of suspicion. Right? We're suspicious of every action. We're suspicious if someone comes in late. Oh, they're lazy. They're this, they're that. Are they looking for another job? If somebody is on their phone, I'm suspicious. Are they scrolling social media? Or do I trust by default? And again, that is not something that you can fix in other people. That is something that begins with you. Yeah. You have to learn to default to trust. And so a very first conversation that we have with new team members is exactly that. In this organization, our default is to trust. I trust you. I trust that you're going to do the right thing. I trust that you're going to keep your word, whether that's explicit, in other words, you told me you're going to do the thing, or implicit, meaning because you work here, because you understand the expectations and the mission of the organization, there's certain implied things that you've communicated to me. I trust you're going to live those things out. But here's the thing. You have the power through your actions. When your words and your actions don't align, you have the power to begin filling my trust with suspicion. Your job is just to maintain the trust that I've already given you. So I could go on and on about little things like that, but there's so many things that encompass building an organization that is centered around trust, building an organization that has a high performance, self-accountable team. It's very, very doable. And the things required to do it are easy. They're easy little things to do, but it requires the daily disciplines to do them.
How do you manage burnout for yourself and or your team? Like when you say high performance, I mean, and I know creative agencies and I know high performance, I know there's a lot of brain that goes into stuff.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, there's a misnomer maybe around high performance. So when we talk about high performance, we typically think of the people who are up drinking coffee at all hours of the night, trying to get the report out, trying to get the paper out. Not calling you out there, Michael. Just, we have this, we have this misnomer that it's the people who are working 24/7 that are the high performers. And in reality, if we step back and we say, what does high performance actually look like in this organization? And we get clear about it, it removes the time constraint. So, for example, in what we do, high performance means a couple of things. Number one, it means that we are delivering phenomenal results for our clients.
Yeah.
So if you're managing a client, if you work for us and you're managing a client, I can quickly tell, are you a high performer or not, based on the results that you are getting for your clients.
Right.
If you're not getting phenomenal results, you're not a high performer. You're struggling. And we've got whole processes and systems around how to get you to the place of high performance. The other that ties into that is the amount of money that you can actually manage. In other words, the number of client dollars that you can manage. And so until you get to that certain threshold, then you're not a high performer. And again, we have systems and processes built in place so that performance is not tied to time. On average, our people here work right around 40 hours a week. I personally work probably about 45 hours a week. And so there's the misnomer between high performance and the amount of time required to do that.
Interesting. That's really cool. I'm glad you made that distinction. So again, you hear that thing and you instantly go to, oh man, these people are getting whipped. Like,
yeah, it's, I talk to my team often about this idea of work-life balance, and I don't believe in it. I don't believe that exists. Now, often when people say they don't believe in this idea of work-life balance, it's because they want you to work a lot more, right? They want you to put in more hours. What I believe is that we go through seasons of life. We go through seasons of work. So there are going to be seasons in your life where you're unable to put in as much time, energy, and effort here. But there's also seasons of your life where, based on the client load that you have, you may have to put in a little bit more time, energy, and effort.
Right.
And so when we have this idea that it's always got to be perfectly balanced, then we're always frustrated when one side leans too heavy and the other one doesn't.
Sure.
So it creates frustration.
That's interesting. Well, do you do any team building stuff? Like, what do you do with a team to keep them cohesive?
Yeah. So, one of the most challenging things for us, Michael, is we have a hybrid team. So, the majority of the team is here in the office in Alexandria, but we do have a portion of the team who works remotely. We've got somebody in Michigan, we've got somebody in North Carolina, and then we've got somebody down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And that has created a very unique challenge because the people here get certain privileges, certain benefits, right, for being in office.
Yep.
The people who are remote have different privileges, different benefits than the people here. But the challenge is, how do we cohesively, build this team together, build the culture where everyone feels heard, everyone feels seen. And again, the culture is about high performance and self-accountability. Some things that we do is we're all together once a quarter. So we fly in the other team to be here in person once a quarter. Every single week, every Monday from 1:45 to 3 p.m., we have every person on the team meeting. And there's some magic things that take place in that meeting that we've shaped and sculpted over the years that tie back into accountability and goals and performance, all that kind of stuff. And then we also do one-on-one. So I meet with the leaders of each department every single week. They meet with their direct reports every single week. So, there's a lot of things that we do together as a team to build that culture. Learning time. We are reading books together as a team, discussing books together as a team.
Cool.
Lots of things like that.
That's wicked. A book club. I like it.
Yep.
That's great. Okay. All right. Allow me to take a right or a left turn, whichever. Imagine, if you will, Wayne, it is a beautiful sunny day in Alexandria, Louisiana. I don't know exactly where your studio is, but we'll say you walk out the front door and you decide to go for a walk along the Red River. Is that a thing close to you?
Yeah, 2 blocks that way.
All right, cool. So you're walking along, and I don't know, maybe you've got a path system there or whatever, but as a creative soul, you're probably like water. And you're sitting there thinking to yourself, Wayne, you say to yourself, I really wish the world knew this one thing. What is this one thing that you wish the world knew?
That consistency creates miracles.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, we live in this world where we know the things we should do. We know the things we shouldn't do, right? We know that we should eat healthy. We know that we should get some exercise. We know that we should surround ourselves with, good people, positive people, people who encourage us and build us up. We know that we should call and check on the people we love and care about. We know all of these things that we should be doing, little tiny, tiny things. And yet it's those very things that we neglect. It's those very things that we don't do consistently. And so I just firmly believe that if we can learn to be consistent in those little things, it will create miracles in our lives. And on that kind of topic, one of the things I was out walking, I didn't make it to the river, but I was out walking just yesterday. And I was thinking about this whole idea and this whole notion that, how long does it actually take to form a habit? Because when we talk about changing our lives or changing our organizations, people often talk about, I've got these habits I either need to break or these habits that I need to create.
Right.
And one of the things that I've reflected on in my life is that, we hear the researchers say it takes, some of them say it takes, 30 days. Some of them say it takes 67 days. There's, all kinds of stuff you'll hear from all the quote unquote experts on this. But one of the things that I thought about in reflecting on my own life was that it only takes today. That is all it takes to live a completely different life. So an example of that would be for me, 6 years ago, I decided I wanted to start running.
Right on.
And what I discovered was that if I set a goal that I'm going to run X number of miles in a month, I would never hit the goal, ever. I would just never hit the goal. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until that I decided that I was going to run 6 days a week. The distance didn't matter.
Yeah.
The time didn't matter. The only goal was I had to run 6 days a week. And so every single day I would just wake up and say, I'm going to run today. That's it. I don't have to commit to doing it tomorrow, but I'm going to run today.
Yeah.
And so I would wake up every single day with that same notion that I'm going to run today. And so for me, it's this idea that I don't have to set a commitment to do 100 push-ups for the next 30 days.
Yeah.
I can decide to do push-ups today. That's it, just today. And then tomorrow, make that same decision. Just today, that is it. I'm going to do the push-ups. And before long, that consistency will create a miracle.
Damn, Wayne, that's awesome. I had no idea we were going to find this place in this show. This is so cool. Thank you for that. That's wicked. And when does your book come out?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of books, talk to me about books that you read or books that your team is reading. Like, what are the things that inspire you? What have you got on your shelf? What do you always go back to? Any of one of those questions.
Yeah, I love the question and I hate the question, if I'm being honest. And the reason is this. I'm an avid reader, and usually it's the book I'm currently reading, Michael, that I'm like, oh man, this is the book everyone needs. This is the one they've got to have.
Yeah.
So books that I go back to on a regular basis. The Art of Living by Epictetus.
Okay.
I go back to that book over and over again, time and time again. The Mountain is You is another one. That book had a profound impact on me. I think I read it 2 years ago, maybe in last year, if not 2 years ago. That book, it's about overcoming self-sabotage. Phenomenal book. That's a great one I go back to. One that always sticks in my head, although I don't necessarily return to the book and reread the book, is a book called The Choice.
Okay. Excellent
book. It's a story about a Holocaust survivor telling her story. And yeah, I don't want to mess it up for people who read it. It's not just about that journey. It is such a fascinating book. She became a counselor later on in life, and just talking through all of that's fascinating. So those would be three that definitely come to mind.
Oh, those are great. Thanks, Wayne. I'm going to put those. We've got a little bookshelf on our website where I put recommendations, and people can just click on the link and buy them right there. I'm going to go buy those today.
Excellent. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
I don't think I would be either. That sounds right down my alley. Okay. When I grew up in a place just outside of Toronto in Canada, so much further north of you. But we would go hunting for crawdads to play with. Do you have crawdads? Yeah, I'm sure you have to have crawdads, right? Like little lobsters. That's a thing for you, right?
Yep. Different name here, but same thing.
What are they called down there?
Crawfish.
Oh, crawfish. All right.
Yep. It's a huge thing here to eat crawfish.
Right. Yeah. You pull off the heads or something like that, or
Yeah. You eat the tail meat, and people try to eat sometimes the little claws on them, all that kind of stuff. It's a huge thing here.
Okay. Well, and to that end, how is the cuisine in Alexandria?
It is good. I've had the privilege of traveling a decent amount.
Yeah.
And the way that we season foods here, very, very flavorful, very, I don't want to say spicy because it's not necessarily spicy, but just a lot of flavor in the food. It's different than you can really get anywhere else in the country. I mean, it's unique. Our food here is definitely unique.
What's the place to go grab a bite in Alexandria? If I rode in there on my motorcycle this summer, where would I go?
Man, there's so many options. We'd have to do a little food tour.
Okay.
That's what we'd have to do.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
I mean, you'd have to go try some crawfish, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, we'll see. That's really cool. Okay, so you mentioned travel. What's your favorite place to travel?
Man, I just love getting outside of, it's a very small town.
Yeah.
So I love getting out, exploring other places. There's nowhere I don't enjoy going, at least for a day, right? I mean, I just love being in new places. I love experiencing kind of downtown areas typically.
Yeah.
I love coffee shops, love sitting and just observing people, watching people, drinking a cup of coffee, and just the sights and sounds of people coming and going. That's my thing.
Love it. Do you journal, or do you have a sketchbook? Like, are you a pen to paper type tactile person?
I am. Yep. I do journal every single morning. I do a little bit of journaling, and I even use, it's sitting right in front of me. I use a physical paper planner. I do have I use Google Calendar, but everything gets transferred to my paper planner here.
Yes.
And sketching notes everywhere. And, Absolutely.
Yeah. I am the same way. You can't beat it, really.
No, not at all. For me, the pen to paper connection,
Yeah.
right? There's something about that. I don't know what it is. I'm sure somebody smarter than me can tell me what that is, but there's something about it.
Yeah, there's something about it for sure. I've even tried drawing on my iPad, which is really nice because you can do all this cool stuff on your iPad and like all these different brushes and stuff like that. And you get Paperlike put on top. Big plug for Paperlike. Feel free to sponsor the show. But what I find is that it's just not the same as, an actual pen or pencil
On the paper.
Yeah. I like that. That's awesome. What's something that you do just for you, Wayne? What's a Wayne Mullins guilty pleasure?
Probably some time on the motorcycle.
Oh, you ride?
Yeah.
My people.
Dealing with a dead battery right now. So working on getting that resolved because the weather here is getting really nice motorcycle weather. And I enjoy, going out. Again, we live kind of rural area, but going out on a lot of these back roads and just going for a few hours, making kind of big loops around some of these back roads. And there's something about that, you can't answer the phone. You can't look at a text message. You can't, it's just you, the road, the wind, your thoughts.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And the smells. Always the smells. Oh, that is so cool. So your poor bike with the broken battery, what do you ride?
I have an Indian Scout Bobber.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yep. So just a little, it's a around town type of bike. It's not one you're going to take on a huge cruise somewhere. It's just, it's too uncomfortable for that to go, super long distances. But for, scooting around town and, short trips, it's great.
Oh, that's so cool. I applaud you. And I'm hoping to go for a big ride this summer. So maybe I'll swing down your way and knock on your door. Take me on that food tour. Yeah. Show me the Red River.
You've got a BMW.
Yeah, I've got a BMW RT 1250 and a Suzuki Boulevard 1500. But I love riding the BMW for long distance.
Yeah.
It's it's kick-ass.
Like a Cadillac?
I don't even know how to explain it. It's like it's an extension of me. Like it doesn't even feel like a vehicle. It just feels like I'm part of all of this.
Yeah, the environment around you.
Yeah, and you don't have to think about it. It just does it. And it's a great bike, certainly. And great for distance.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you should you should take the podcast on the road.
I'm thinking about it. I'm supposed to be down in Vegas this summer, which is going to be hot as hell. I imagine, but yeah, to throw all the kit in the back and head down and just interview people along the way.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
Hell of a good idea, Wayne. All right. All right. Well, I'll put you on the list if I get down that way.
Let's do it. We'll get some food.
Yeah, right on. Okay. So one of my favorite parts of the show, of course, is the advice that we give to others. So, we can call them rebels in waiting. We can call them entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, solopreneurs, big business CEOs, people that are just like, oh, I got to make a choice. But whoever these people are, they're standing on the precipice of something. And I really just love getting people's advice for how to navigate that. How do you make that choice? What do you do? So what advice do you have for these people, Wayne?
That's a tough question.
Yeah,
but it's a question I love. It is. It's a question I love. So my context for answering that question comes from, my environment and the people who come to me with similar questions. And one of the things right now that is very prevalent is this idea of figuring out your purpose. So I have a lot of people coming to me saying, I've got option A, option B, but I just don't know if it fits into my purpose. And I really don't know what my purpose even is yet. Right. How do I find my purpose? And what I've discovered for myself is that, first of all, purpose and usefulness come from the same root word. They come from the same Latin word. And so when we think about trying to find our purpose, we have to remember that purpose really means usefulness. How do we find what we are useful at? And there's two important things about that. When we are useful, we are typically serving others. We're using our innate gifts and abilities and talents to help other people accomplish their goals, solve their problems, fix things, solve things, whatever it may be. And the interesting thing is, we can't discover our purpose, our usefulness, sitting in a room with a journal and a piece of paper. We can't do it that way because we don't know how we can be useful until we begin experimenting, until we begin putting ourselves out there, testing our skills, testing our abilities, trying to figure out how do we serve other people? How do we give back to other people? When we jump in with that perspective and that approach, it's amazing what happens, right? I think we often get hung up on the decision. And I love this analogy of doors. So we think about a door. There's a one-way door and there's revolving doors. And more often than not, the decision that you or I are facing, it is not a one-way door. In other words, do I leave my job, my current job, and pursue this other job? For the most part, that is not going to be a one-way door. Meaning, if I were to leave my job and go take another job, could I come back to work for the same company? Maybe so, maybe not. But could I probably get another job doing the same type of work in the same field that I was in before? There's a pretty good chance if I was decent at it that I could do that. So in that example, that's a revolving door. But in our brains, we view that decision to leave my job and try something new as a one-way door. We think if I leave this job and step out and try something new, I'm never going to get my life back to the way it was if it doesn't work out.
Right.
In reality, most often, it is just a revolving door. We may not be at the same job. We may not get in the exact same situation, but we can get back pretty close if things don't work out.
Damn. That's outstanding.
Thank you.
Wayne, I've had a lot of aha moments in this short period of time we've had together. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate that. Talk to me about, and I guess sort of, I'd like to leave it here. The weekend's coming up, and you're in beautiful Louisiana. What plans? What would you do with your family on a weekend? Like, what's kind of the decompression Mullins family adventure time?
So that's been different for us of recent. We're in the process of building a house, selling our current house. And so we've been doing a lot of weekend projects on both the existing house and on the new house.
Yeah.
But outside of that, we are very, I would say, adventurous. For the most part, we love outdoors. We love, hiking, being out on some trails. We have some wonderful national forests around here that we can hike through, all, within 15, 20 minutes. Bike rides as a family. We love going out to eat as a family. That's one of our favorite things to do is go out and enjoy a good meal together as a family.
Love that.
So, we're active. So, we love, last night, for example, it's not the weekend, but last night our family does kickboxing. So we're all in a kickboxing class.
Yes.
It's, I will say this, that it is a great form of marriage therapy and counseling. So when my wife spar against each other, it's a wonderful, wonderful therapy session.
That's awesome. Isn't that the truth, though? Oh, yeah, I could see that. And there's nothing like just sweating it out and, pummeling on each other a little bit to get the juices flowing, I guess. That's great.
Yep.
Wayne, this has been an absolute pleasure, and it's been so lovely having you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for that opportunity, Michael, and the invite. And again, if you make the motorcycle trip, definitely let me know.
Oh, yes, sir, I will.
Thank you so much for listening. I've been your host, Michael Dargie, and this has been the RebelRebel Podcast. It's a podcast for creative rebels and entrepreneurs all over the world. And hey, if you're a rebel or you know a rebel, why don't you head on over to the RebelRebelPodcast.com and fill out our guest request form. We'll get back to you within 24 hours, and maybe we can share your story with the world. Don't forget to like, share, or subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And thanks so much for listening. Until next time.